Okay, we will get started. Welcome everyone to Santaquin City Planning Commission meeting. It's Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. It's good to see members of the public here. Welcome. We're glad you're here. All right. Would anyone like to get us started tonight with an inspirational thought or an invocation?
I have one.
Please.
This quote is unknown. It says, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. So,
very good. Thank you, Commissioner Nixon.
Yeah.
All right. Would anyone like to lead us in the pledge tonight?
I'll do it.
Please. That was well timed.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you to our city recorder. Okay. On the screen in front of us is our agenda for tonight. There's only one agenda item, and we will get to that promptly. However, before we do that, we'll start tonight, as we do every Planning Commission meeting, with a public forum. So for those of you in attendance, the public forum is your opportunity to address the commission with regard to anything that's on your mind. However, if your comments are related to the public hearing that we have on the agenda with regard to the rezone, I'd ask you to please hold on to your comments for just a minute until we get to that public hearing, and then we'll ask you to speak then. But for anything else, if you'd like to address the commission, now would be the time to do it. So I will open the public forum tonight at 7:02 and invite any comments if you have them, anything that's not related to the rezone. All right, if there's no comments for the public forum, then we will close the public forum at 7:02. And we can move right into agenda item number 1. This is a proposed rezone request.
Okay, for the rezone request, it's approximately just under 30 acres. It's located at 4279 West, 12800 South. It's currently residential agriculture. They're hoping to rezone it to the commercial 1 zone. The applicants are in attendance, so I'm sure they are happy to answer any questions. What sparked their rezone request is to develop a luxury RV resort. I do want to emphasize tonight that your job is to make a recommendation for a rezone of residential agriculture to commercial zone. We're not necessarily approving the luxury RV resort. It's just focusing on the rezone.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Aspen. Okay. Since the applicants are here, is there anything you'd like to add to the presentation that was just given? All right. Would you step up to the podium and state your name for the record for us?
Good evening. My name is Brennan Jackson. I am married to Veronica Field and the rest of her family that's here today. We just wanted to thank you for your time tonight and go over some things that we wanted to bring to your attention, where with this, the family looked at what they could do possibly with the property that they own here in the Santaquin city limits, and that could benefit the city as well as the family, and with bringing some tax income with having a luxury RV resort, not an RV park, but an RV resort, which would be a destination place, with a Western Museum as part of that experience that would bring people here, with having the Nebo Loop and other opportunities. It would not be a long stay type resort, but we wanted to do something that could benefit the community, and with new things that are going to be happening and developing. One of the things about an RV resort is the transient tax that it does create for the city that you don't get from other, like, hotels and motels and things like that. And so we just wanted to let this commission know that it's not going to be a long term, that it would be a short term stay, that it would be a destination place, that it would be a resort that I think that the communities would be proud of. So any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant at this point? Okay, thank you for that. We do have a public hearing tonight, and so we'll take care of that. And there may be some questions that arise from that, so maybe we'll have you come up and address those if that happens. So let's go ahead with the public hearing now on this agenda item. I'm going to open the public hearing at 7:05, and I'll invite any comments if anyone would like to speak to this agenda item. Would you please step up to the microphone?
If I can get there.
Thank you. Would you state your name for us, please, for the record?
I'm Monty Pugh, and I just live down the neighborhood there by the place. My question, when he said short term, I didn't know what he meant by short term. How long?
Yeah, you couldn't stay more than 28 days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions for the public hearing?
I'll just talk to you guys because. So, what are have you guys worked out details as far as the improvement on the roads and stuff that way?
So with the new water line that's going in, a lot of that's going to be paved, but as we look at doing the infrastructure and things like that, the road will make sure that that's taken care of, and the rest of the infrastructure, we needed to get approval before we can go down the road to find out electrical, all of those.
Right. That's my only concern, because I know Mark and those guys pulling their horse trailers and stuff down around the lanes. It makes it kind of tight in there, so that's concern I have, really.
We do realize it's not, I guess the infrastructure isn't there right now, and we do, if we can go ahead with it, we'll make it so it's up to where it needs to be.
Okay. I just didn't know if you'd already worked out some of that with the city. Like when we were trying to build down there, some of that stuff we had to talk to them about before.
Yeah.
So. Okay. All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other comments tonight for the public hearing? Please state your name for us for the record.
Ryan Depew. So I just don't want to take away any opportunities for anybody, but I just was reading through some of the Santaquin general plans. It's a few years old, so I just want it as more of a reminder to the council. If I can find it here. So there are guidelines for land use. So it states in one of the policies, 14, sorry I had it, now I've lost it. Oh, here we go. So agricultural preservation is a significant land use which will preserve the character of Santaquin. Agricultural uses must be protected from encroachment upon new development and recognized as preferred land use. So I was just looking at the outline they've got here, and it looks pretty good. And I know it borders right next to our fence, and so one of my concerns would just be make sure that we have mitigation across that fence line, so we're not to mitigate that noise and any traffic that might be tempted to come across the fence or things like that. But really that's it. And so like I said, I'm not looking to take away opportunities, just to make sure that we're protected. Thanks.
All right, very good. Thank you. Any other comments tonight? Okay. If not, then we will close the public hearing at 7:09, and we can move into discussion on this rezone. Actually, before we do that, maybe I'll give the applicant a chance. Was there anything there that you'd like to respond to officially? Or any other questions? Either to their questions or anything you'd like to add at this point after the public hearing?
I guess our thoughts on this are...
Would you step up to the microphone for us?
Yeah,
Thanks.
Sorry, I had to state my name. My name's Mackley Anderson. Our thoughts on this are growth is coming, and rather than have high-density housing or something in that space, we would like to keep it with, like he was saying, the natural preservation of keeping the outdoor space there. So that is our hope and our goal too, is and that we would bring in lots of trees and things for noise barriers and for visual barriers between your properties. We don't want, like high density housing behind you guys either. So it would be our goal to preserve the land as it is and give people a wonderful outdoor space to come and enjoy.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, commissioners, as I stated, it's our job to provide a recommendation to the city council on this proposed rezone. There is some guidance on how the planning commission should approach rezone applications, and that's found in code section 1020.60. And it says basically that the primary consideration should be how the application conforms to the intent of the general plan and the annexation plan. There's already been a little bit of discussion on that. Whether or not it will adversely affect surrounding properties, and whether it would cause any property or structures to become non-conforming. So that's really the guidance we have in the code. But based on that, what do you guys think?
I have a question. What do you guys currently use that land for right now?
Not much really. We farmed it some. Oh, I'm Jade Anderson.
Thanks.
Currently, we just have some pens there, a little bit of livestock, and we have farmed it in the past. But currently, right now, just we have a little bit of livestock there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Good question. While we're thinking, I'm just going to have a look at the pamphlet you brought in.
And you are aware that it's not a permitted use in a commercial zone, right, for RV parks? You're aware of that? RV resort?
Yeah, so maybe I can jump in there and provide a little bit more context and kind of technical perspective, if you will. So we've met with the family, and they provided us with this pamphlet, which I know is being passed around up here. And this is really kind of the justification for why they need some legislative action to take place in order for this to work. So Commissioner Hoffman is exactly right. We don't really have even a land use category for RV resorts. We have RV parks, but right now RV parks are prohibited in I think in all of our zones. This is a unique idea. It's more of an upscale RV park and more of a experiential type of a land use. So really, to initiate the process, they kind of, in coordinating with staff, talked about doing a rezone first. But even if a rezone were to be approved, there's additional steps that would need to happen, like some code language we need to define what an RV resort is. We need to allow for that in the land use table of whatever zone that it ends up being. So, I think it's safe to say that I think the Field family is interested in incorporating this. They're kind of looking maybe to staff to just help guide them on how to make it happen. I don't think they care per se whether it's C1 or if it's done some other way, and I think that can be part of the Planning Commission and City Council's consideration, is maybe there's a better way of doing this. Now, what I will say for the C1 zone, and I think why they proposed that was maybe with some after some discussion with staff, one of the things that makes sense to me about C1 being in that area is it's against the freeway, and as we'll sometimes talk about, is the future plans for an interchange in that area. It's a little bit north of there. It's at 124th or 12400 South. So there is a future interchange, and the C1 zone is technically called the interchange commercial zone. So that interchange may not happen for years. Who knows? It all just depends on growth. It could be 10 years. It could be 20 years. It could be, I don't know. But there is some logic of trying to accommodate their request or think towards future growth and potential of that area with a request like this. Now, and I appreciate the comment about what our general plan says. That is something else that comes into play in this process, is our general plan actually shows that future land use in that area as being what's called agricultural heritage area. So that's something that might need to be looked at with our general plan as well. And as Chairman Wood mentioned, part of a rezone consideration is to look at what our general plan says. So there's a number of different things kind of in play here. And this is really kind of the first look that you guys have had on. I anticipate there's probably quite a few steps that would need to take place in order for this to happen. Obviously, there's some discussion that could be had about the best way of doing that. So for purposes of tonight, maybe don't look at it as necessarily rezone it as C1 or not. I mean, that is what their request is. But I think in our conversations with them, their request is really trying to incorporate an RV resort luxury. It would have a clubhouse. They've talked about a Western rodeo museum that would be in there. It would not just be a place for RVs to set up. It'd be kind of a resort feel with those kind of amenities that would accompany it. And you can see in their proposal, some of the nice features and amenities that it would have. Now, as Aspen mentioned and addressed some of the comments that the public made, yeah, we're not getting into the details of what the resort would be. That's more for a site plan process that would happen at some point in the future. And those are important details that will be considered. And we already have regulations that will cover a lot of those things. Infrastructure has been brought up and things like that. But I think for purposes of where we're at right now, this is really a high-level general review of whether or not a land use like this is appropriate and if the city would like to move in that direction. And if so, then we need to get the zoning in place and the zoning language in place and that so that it can even be allowed. And then once those things are done and in place, then we can dive more into the details through a site plan process or a subdivision process or whatever. Obviously, they haven't gone into all the little details, but they've done a really good job of really painting a picture and giving a vision of what it is they want to do on that property. I think for purposes of tonight and for the next little bit, it's trying to really envision if this is the right fit for a land use like this to be in that particular area. So
I understand all that. I get that. But C1, if we change C1 and then we make these RV resorts permitted use, there's multiple C1 parcels throughout the city that would apply to the same thing. So they could do this anywhere in the C1 zone. So I'm just wondering if you guys are set on C1 or if you'd be more interested in creating a new zone of some kind, or what you're interested in. Because if we change C1 and you go through the process and get RV resort permitted use or a conditional use even in a C1, there are, especially on the south end of town, there's a lot of open property down there where somebody else could come in and do the same thing that's already zoned C1. So that's something for you guys to think about too, is if you want to go C1 or if you would prefer we look at creating some other type of zone for this resort.
And I think
Will you step up to the mic so they can hear what you're saying?
The family's very interested in, working the details out with the city. So whatever is in the best interest of our neighbors, what's in the best interest of the community and the family, we'd look at all options. We know there's a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of decisions that are going to have to be made walking through this process. But whatever works best for everybody involved, we'd be interested in looking at that.
This would be the quickest and easiest way to get a zone change, obviously, because it's an existing zone.
Right.
But that would open up every C1 parcel or C1 zone for the same type of thing.
And I think, too, that one of the thoughts that we had is, and I'm not sure if it's at this place or at the city council, that because of the C1 issues, you may have a 5-acre plot that's C1. You may have a 10-acre, and maybe it's something that the city looks at and mandates that if you want to do an RV resort like that you have to have a required number of acres to be able to do that appropriately. And so we're open for any suggestions in how to move forward in everybody's best interest.
And I appreciate Commissioner Hoffman's point. In fact, that was something when we met with the family, that there's a number of different ways that you can go about doing this. And we even mentioned that there could be an RV resort zone created. And I appreciate the concerns that are brought up, because anytime you do a rezone, you have to look what can be broadly applied if you change the zoning of that. So So again, I think to initiate the process, that they submitted an application, and it was kind of the first step. But like I say, and the family can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they really care what the zoning is. They just want to try and implement an RV resort, and if that means creating a new zone or doing C1 or something else, or I think they're good with the city working out the details of how to best apply the zoning and regulate a new land use like this. So
Yeah.
that's a great point. And again, really, it's about what mechanism do we want to implement to make this sort of a thing happen, if the city would like to have something like this happen.
Will you go back to that zoning map? I'm looking at the zoning map here, but you guys can't see it. Will you go back to that? Yeah. So you can see all the red is C1 currently. So there's some pretty large C1 empty parcels. So if we change this to C1 and you get it through city council and get a RV resort as permitted use, I mean, somebody could come in on the south exit and do the exact same thing. So that's something we need to think about if we want multiple RV resorts around here.
And all of the orange on the east side of the railroad track, all the orange in the PC is also C1 now.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
That's right.
And I agree with Drew, because I work with a lot of commercial agents and businesses, and you don't want to open up that C1 to this.
So
maybe it would get filled pretty quick.
It may be in our best interest to look into a different type of zone, like Jason's saying, just specifically for this RV resort, if that's what you're set on doing. But if you have other commercial uses in mind, C1 might be your best option.
Yep.
But if you're set on a resort, then maybe this may not be your best option for the city or you.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I think that's right on point.
Yeah.
But then it would be up to us to come up with some kind of a zone
Yeah.
to allow this
Yeah.
and still be flexible somewhat, so.
And if I may, along those lines, something that in the meeting that we had with him, and I saw her just walk in, they have the business owner from it's safe to call yours an RV resort as well? So an RV resort, a new one that's on the south side of Nephi.
Yeah, I've seen
we have the business owner of that's in here that has kind of worked with the family on their proposal here. I mean, there's regulations that we can look in other communities and use that to create a specific zone or specific regulations, however that works. But I think for tonight's purposes is, are you generally okay or supportive of this idea of an RV resort? And if you are, if you have some guidance, I think, Commissioner Hoffman's already given a little bit of guidance there, but if you have some guidance there, I think that would be an appropriate recommendation, and then we can get the city council's review of this and see what they think. And if they're generally supportive of this land use and this idea, then we as staff can start figuring out the best way to implement that. And maybe it's in a new zone, maybe it's in an existing zone with specific regulations, maybe it's a conditional use permit. There's a number of different ways we can do it. But I think, so we don't get into the weeds on a number of things, I think the Planning Commission's feelings on the general idea of a land use like this in that particular area is really, I think, what we're looking for tonight.
I don't have an issue with this land use. I just don't know if C1 is the best zone for this. I think you'd be better off to propose a different type of zone specifically for this, and then we wouldn't open up all the C1 zones to this same concept. So it would probably be in your best interest to change that, and I have no objections to this idea or this in this area. I think it'd be a great use. I just don't know if C1 would be the best option. We could do it and make it work, but then it would open up a lot of other.
No, if you have
areas.
intent to do anything other than the resort and you wanted C1, I would say do a master development agreement and do mixed zones. And I would do a zone just for the RV and some for the C1. But if you're just wanting to do resort, don't switch it to C1. Switch it. Let's make a different zone for it.
Do you happen to know what the Nephi land is zoned as that does have the RV resort?
I think it's industrial.
Sure.
Just state your name for the record when you step up there, if you would.
Yeah,
My name's Callie Bowers. I no longer own the RV park in Nephi, so I don't want you thinking what the heck, but I sold it last fall. The Fields approached me about helping them with this project, and I'm super excited because I know what these things are capable of if they're done right. The zone in Nephi is highway commercial, where that RV parks are allowed in, and they have we did a conditional use permit to kind of separate us from, so you have to have so many acres, kind of what Brendan was saying, like it has to be so big to try to mitigate tons of RV parks flooding the area, which wouldn't make sense anyway. But they're really trying to create an experience in Santaquin, and I think it would be awesome. And I lean towards, you know, a new zone, just something separate, kind of sets it apart, and with some kind of tougher regulations maybe, so that they're not popping up around every corner, you know, whether that's lot size, whether that's open space around it, which is something that Nephi did when I built mine. So, you know, we had a walking trail and we had to have so many acres surrounding the park that would stay open, which kind of lessens the appeal for most other developers. So anyway, there's lots of options that you could go with, but yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Commissioners, are we generally in favor of this type of land use and proceeding perhaps with a recommendation in that direction, but maybe not C1?
Yeah, and I like the history of the resort, what you guys are doing, especially with the history of your family. I would love to see that. I think it would bring a lot of people to the area and to explore South Utah County. So I think it's a great idea, but to protect you and that land use, I think I would do a different zone. So.
Okay. Please.
So where and when would we request a change in whether it's C1 or something different? Is that just something that would be a recommendation that comes from this body if it's something we want to move forward with?
Yeah, so the way I see this is I think the planning commissioners are looking at the application in front of them, which is a proposed zoning. I mean, really, this is a legislative process. Yes, they're reacting specifically to the request to C1. They're maybe not thrilled with the idea of C1 zoning being there. But really, you've initiated the process, and I think with any suggestions that they have, the next step in this process is to take whatever recommendation they have and take it to the city council. They'll continue to give guidance on, one, if they like this idea of implementing an RV resort, which is a term that we don't have defined or we don't really have in our land use definitions. But if they like that, then really staff will kind of work on the means to the end, and that will be in the form of what I'm hearing is maybe the best way to do it is through new zoning regulations or something like that. And we'll have to work on that in the details. But like I say, I think if we can get the general feeling and a recommendation on that general feeling, and the recommendation is probably going to say no to the C1 zoning, but if they're supportive of the idea, we'll take that, see what the council thinks, and then from there we can get to work on how to really create that means to the end of what you're proposing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if we created a zone, something like a commercial recreation, something
like that.
Who knows what it would be named, but something similar to that.
Yeah.
But the C1 has a lot of other permitted uses that I don't think would match up with this very well.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
One question.
Sure.
Just with the museum on there, would we need two separate, or would that be okay?
That's something we're gonna have to work through with this new zone, if that's what the council chooses to do, is approve a new zone, is work through those details and see. We don't want to limit it strictly to what you guys are doing either. We want it to have some other uses as well.
Well, and I just didn't know, because you kind of was mentioned maybe having two different zones, but I didn't know if they would need to be different.
Right.
I don't think so. I don't
This-
know what you guys think, but
This is a unique enough idea that it may not fit within any existing zones that we have. We're going to look at what we have and see if it fits in there. If it not, then this would be something. But hopefully, we'll get the direction that we need, and then staff will be able to put together something that will work, and then there'll be some fine tuning, and we'll work through that. So, like I say, I think you've done a really good job of really painting the picture of what you're wanting to do with this, which includes the idea of a museum. and other amenities. And so those will be taken into consideration as we draft something that's going to work for this proposed idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so as Jason just mentioned, we need to make a recommendation to the city council. It doesn't have to be to approve or not the C1 strictly, right? We can make a recommendation to move in the direction of defining a zone that would permit this type of use. And I think that's kind of where we're all at.
Yeah.
So, does anyone have a motion in mind that they would like to make with regard to a recommendation for the city council?
True. I can make one, but it's about wording it correctly. So I would make a motion to forward a positive recommendation to rezone the 29 acres of the parcel numbers 300920009, 300920018, 300920011 from a residential agricultural zone to a zone that we can create that will fit an RV resort or the needs of what the request of the applicant is. Does that work?
That sounds great.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
All right.
Good.
I'll second that.
Okay. Thanks.
We have a motion by Commissioner Nixon and a second by Commissioner Tolman. Any discussion on that before we vote? All right, let's vote on the motion. Commissioner Moe?
Yes.
Commissioner Nixon?
Yes.
Commissioner Wood? Yes. Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes.
Commissioner Tolman?
Yes.
Okay, that motion is forwarded to the city council, and it is unanimous. Positive recommendation on moving forward.
I will coordinate with the mayor who sets the agenda for council meetings. This may likely be on the next city council agenda, which is next Tuesday, but I'll be in communication with you and let you know for sure. Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
All right.
Good to see you again. You too, Ma. Great to see you. Good to see you, Ma.
So that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there any other business we need to take care of tonight?
There's nothing tonight, but moving forward, there was a subdivision that was the Cortland Townhomes that was conditionally approved during DRC this morning. So if they get their red lines addressed, they could be on the next planning commission. But that's the only tentative for the upcoming on the 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's what I just did.
I think he just is keeping the wand. Good to see you. Yeah. How are you? You guys are. This would be awesome. So,
Thanks.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
The data center that we also reviewed back in the fall, they were conditionally approved during DRC this morning as well.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
Did they state what type of gas they're using? I know Mike had brought it up last time.
So there'd be a lot of natural gas they're going to use with that.
Okay.
Obviously, there's a lot of things that will be through the building permit process, but for the most part, it was approved with conditions. There's still a lot of engineering and stuff that needs to be worked out, but for the most part, it's going to be with the engineering department. So we didn't see the need for them to come back to the DRC because almost everything else had been addressed. But yeah, it's a big project, big site plan, and so there's still some work that needs to be done there. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, commissioners, anything else we need to discuss tonight?
No.
All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7:34.
Thank you. We're adjourned at 7:34.